Hi there and herzlich willkommen. I'm so glad you could all join us today. My name is Niamh Cooper and I'm commissioning editor here at Folens. And today we're going to talk about tackling the new junior cycle German exam. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. I know there's still people joining, so I'm just going to go through the agenda very briefly. Quick introductions. Then we're going to do, Medb Farrell, our author, is going to talk about tackling the new junior cycle German exam. We're going to do a Q&A and then we'll finish up. So just a bit of housekeeping then. All told, we're going to keep to the 40 minutes as much as we can, especially because it's Pancake Tuesday and we don't want to be delaying anybody today. If you have questions, the best way to manage them today, I think, is if you just type them into the chat box. There's a screenshot there for those of you who haven't used GoToMeeting as much before. We'll ask you, if you don't mind, to complete one little survey question at the very end. We'd be delighted if you would. It's only one question. Just a note as well that as people are joining us, we're going to actually record this meeting so that you can look back on it, or if people miss the start, that sometimes happens, that you can look back over it again. Now, without further ado, I am going to introduce our author, Medb Farrell. So Medb, many of you may know her because she recently spoke at the GDI. She is a native German speaker. Also, she's head of the German department at the Collage Probe-Subtante. She's a very experienced examiner, and she also facilitates the National Induction Programme for Teachers. And it's probably noteworthy as well that Medb also is very involved in writing mocks. So now, Medb, I'd like to hand over to you, tackling the new junior cycle exam. I'm going to just share the screen now so that Medb can present her slides.
Danke, Niamh. Kannst du das jetzt sehen? Niamh?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute there. So if you want to do, go on full screen if you like, Medb.
Ja, mache ich. Du siehst,
perfect.
Du kannst es sehen, oder?
Yeah, we can see them. Yeah, that's it. That's perfect. Ready?
Genau. Okay, also, vielen Dank.
Sorry, we have a great team behind the scenes, Bridget and Medb. Bridget, I believe you're hitting record as we speak now. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Medb, over to you.
Also, guten Abend and thank you for coming. So I'm going to look at tackling the new junior cycle German exam this evening. So my aims today are to outline the various elements of the exam, to discuss the marking scheme and highlight the new skills that junior cycle requires. So breaking down the junior cycle German exam, now as you will know yourselves, the listening is 140 marks. That is exactly like the old junior cert, so that's 35% of the exam. We have the reading section, again 35% of the exam, again quite similar to the old junior cert, and then the writing, which is 80 marks, which is 20% of the exam, and then of course we have the assessment task, which is 10%. And as you know yourselves, CBA 1 and 2 are part of the junior cycle profile of achievement, so they don't actually they are no percentage of the overall exam result at the end. They're just part of the JCPA, and that brings us to 400 marks in total. Okay, so I'd like to have a look at the listening. So the listening is probably something that has changed quite dramatically to the old junior cert. So questions 1 to 4 in particular are very different to the old way. So you answer in German here. The levels are graded. There's a graded level of difficulty. So questions 1 and 2 are multiple choice. As you know, we have question 3 multiple choice plus a written question, and then there's question 4, which I would maybe argue that might actually be the hardest question on the paper. Question 4 all needs to be answered in German, and half marks for answering in English. Here, I would say I think that's very likely to be the case, and they will allow phonetic spelling. So quite often, like cities. So in the exam, in the Leaving Cert, for example, where I marked, we would allow phonetic spelling for certain things, and I think they will be even more kind of nice probably in the junior cycle. Okay, so question 1. So I did want to bring to your attention that Gefällt Mir uses this new these new listening exercises. So as we see here, this SEC sample paper, that's question 1. Question 1 in Gefällt Mir is kind of it reflects that question. So here we have A, B und C, swimming, basketball, football, skiing, welche Situation passt? Question 2, here we have you choose which one. Now, one of the main things that students need to understand here are the question words, and I think there is maybe a stronger emphasis on question words in the new junior cycle German than there would have been previously, because it's not only in the blog that they need to understand those, but it's also in the listening. So here we have was, wann, wo, and so they need to understand all of those question words. And here in Gefällt Mir, for example, we are practicing those from the outset. Question 3, again, a little bit harder. You have your multiple choice questions, but you also have, so in the sample paper here, you have B, was hat Jonas gekauft? And in Gefällt Mir on the left here, we have 1, 2, and 3 are multiple choice, and then 4 and 5, the students need to write in German, wann ist das Fußballspiel? And wer ist Kapitän? And as you know, wer is quite often misunderstood by students. So again, it's very important for them to practice their question words from the very outset. Here we have a question 4, for example, and again, Gefällt Mir has a similar, reflects that type of question. Interestingly, about question 4, I just wondered myself if the weather might start being a more important topic in the new junior cycle, a little bit like we have in the Leaving Cert Teil 4, we have question 4, which is always the weather forecast. I just remember, if you think back to the old junior cert, we had the B1, which was the directions, and we have the C3, which was the recipe. Those seem to be gone now. That doesn't seem to be in the listing anymore. But I'm wondering about question 4, if question 4 will kind of often have weather. Now, this we will soon know, I suppose. And the beauty of exams is that they tend to evolve as time goes on. But whether I can see this maybe cropping up more than previously. Okay, listening questions 5 to 7. Now, just from marking mocks, I've noticed that the students are finding these a little bit tricky because they're so short. It's a voicemail, and I can see this also evolving into an announcement of some kind, a little bit like C2 in the old junior cert listening. If you remember, you know, there was an advertisement or an announcement. I can imagine that also coming in here. It's one person speaking and you answer in English, but because it's so short, I find that students are finding it perhaps a little trickier than you might think. So again, Gefällt Mir reflects these types of exercises like in the sample paper. So here you have different voicemails. So you have Britta organisiert, and then you have eine Sprachnachricht and Pläne. They would all be kind of modeled on the sample paper, the SEC sample paper kind of questions. Questions 8 and 10, these are very similar, I suppose, to what we would be used to from D and E from the old junior cert. So question 4 now, they ask for a phone number, and I can imagine that spelling a name will come in here sometimes as well. And then we have a true or false section in question 10, and just, I suppose, as a little bit of an easier question for maybe weaker students, but 8 and 10 are certainly harder. and you know, it's very similar to D and E, I suppose, of the old junior cert. And here we have Gefällt Mir, for example, here has different ones. So here, eine Bestellung, there we have a phone number, and then we have spell Hans's name is question 6. And then again, in der Gaststätte, there is a dialogue. So there's plenty of listening exercises, and they're all modeled on the new listening. Question 9 is an interesting one. This it appears to me to be the cultural listening comprehension. So as you know, we have strand 3 now. There's a lot more emphasis on culture, and question 9 seems to be the cultural question. Now, a portrait of a city, that's a very nice general topic. So I can imagine it being a portrait of a city quite a lot, if always, because it's a nice, any kind of topic can come up in this. Of course, city buildings and things like that will be, of course, very important that they know their words for those. We have a true or false question in there and a multiple choice question as well, perhaps for the weaker candidate. So here is Kapitel 8 in Gefällt Mir is meine Stadt, and we have ein Stadtportrait. We have number of Stadtportraits there, modeled on question 9. We also have a class test which is available on the Folens.ie, and there's always a listening comprehension with the class test, and again in that class test, that's also a Stadtportrait. So just to get the students practicing that kind of exercise as early as possible. Okay, so we're moving on to the reading now. So again, the reading is graded. There's a graded level of difficulty here. You answer in English. There are authentic texts. There is quite a long advertisement, which is a little bit different to maybe what we had in the old junior cycle or junior cert. And there is notably a removal of narrative and literary text. So text G in junior cert it has gone. That does not appear to be coming up anymore. So questions 11, 12, and 13. We have question 11, which is very similar to the old ordinary level junior cert, text A. Then we have the compound nouns, which many of you will recognize as the ordinary level leaving cert grammar section has a section like that. And then we have question 13, which is reading comprehension on 2 teenagers, and that is very similar to text E at the old junior cert. So here, this is something that is kind of a common kind of exercise that runs through the book, and will run through the second book also. So compound nouns, splitting them up and translating them exactly like in the sample paper. And I suppose what this kind of also does is not only, it also shows students that yes, German words can be very long, but they're only but you can break them down into small words, and they're just, they're spelled together, but they can be broken down very nicely. So yeah, that's a nice little exercise. And then we have, so this is question 13, again, very similar to text E. As you can see here, every reading comprehension in Gefällt Mir starts with a kind of a pre-reading section. So this is for students to scan the text, to be able to pick out the sentences, and then they need to find particular words they're underlined in the text, a little bit like, I suppose, Deutsch Komplett kind of has that. You probably know it from that. But students have to figure out themselves what a word could mean depending on the context, instead of just rushing to Google Translate or an online dictionary or a dictionary. Now, questions 14, 15, and 16. Question 14 seems to me to be quite a factual text. So if you look back on the sample paper one, it's full of kind of statistics and facts, and there's also a true or false section here. So I can see that continuing to be quite a factual text. Then we have the advertisement, so it's quite a long advertisement. I could also see this maybe being a recipe sometimes. And then we have a question 6, the question 16, which is the text F at Old Junior Cert, and then text G is not there anymore. So here, for example, we have BioNTech. Okay, this is quite a factual text. BioNTech, a lot of you will probably have it in your arms. It's the company behind the so-called Pfizer vaccine. In Germany, they wouldn't know what you're talking about if you said Pfizer. It's the BioNTech vaccine, and it's just kind of, it's full of kind of factual things. And as you can see here, we have true or false section here on the two founders of the company, etc. So again, very similar to what they will see, what they will face then at the end of their 3 years. Then we have our authentic text. So this is an authentic text, but it's also kind of an advertisement. So I thought it would suit for question 15 as an example. Again, we have our richtig oder falsch, and then we have our Antworten auf Englisch. And then here's question 16. Again, kind of a journalistic text here about Schweizer Armbanduhren. Again, you have your pre-reading and your post-reading exercises. Now the writing. So the writing, it has changed significantly. We have what I can see becoming a grammar section. I know in the sample paper it's not really grammar as such, but I do see this evolving into a kind of a grammar section, and I envisage that this will be a 10-mark question or section. And then we have question 18, which is a closed text, and it's very like the old ordinary level junior cert, so at 20 marks. And I must say, from marking the mocks, I find students are finding this quite tricky. So I think this will need quite a lot of practice. And then we have the blog, or perhaps I can see this also being an email from time to time, which is similar again to the old junior cert. I see this being a 50-mark question. So as you can see here, question 18, which students are finding a little bit tricky from the mocks I've marked. So you need to, as it shows here, you have your infographic, and then you have your closed text at the bottom. Now the portfolio of Gefällt Mir has a number of these kind of exercises, and because they do need to be practiced. I just want to look at the marking scheme to do with question 18. Now, again, I see this being pretty much exactly like the old junior cert. So it's 20 marks. Six of the spaces will be for verbs, and those verbs must be conjugated. And I see 2 marks for the correct verb with the correct form. But if the ending is incorrect, I see that dropping to 1 mark for the correct verb. And then there'll be 8 other words, and there'll be a strong emphasis on nouns here. So for example, in 2019, the ordinary level paper had 6 nouns, 1 conjunction and 1 preposition. And I see that kind of pattern continuing. So I think there will be a strong emphasis on verbs and nouns. What I'm finding is that students are finding, particularly conjugating the verbs, very hard. They're finding the nouns quite easy, but then getting the right verb, if it's not in the infographic, and being able to conjugate it properly, that's where they're losing marks. So I think that's something they're certainly going to need to practice. And then we have the marking scheme for the blog. And the questions, again, are graded in difficulty, so they start off quite easily and get harder as it continues. There are 11 questions, and I see this being a 30 content marks question or in full. So we have 2 content marks for 7 questions, and then there are 4 questions that will require 2 separate verbs, answers or details at 2 marks each. So for example, hast du eine Lieblingssendung? Und warum ist sie deine Lieblingssendung, or something like that. So you have, yeah, meine Lieblingssendung heißt Friends, and then you need to give a reason. Denn die Sendung ist lustig, or whatever. And again, let's say, was machst du in deiner Freizeit? 2 separate verbs you'll require here. So the student can't say ich spiele Fußball und Basketball. That will be a 2-mark content. You need a different verb to get the second mark. So ich spiele Fußball und ich fahre gern Rad, or something like that would get them the second mark. So that would give them the 4 content marks. Now, what I think they're going to take over from the ordinary level junior cert will be if the verb is omitted. So I think they will give that a 1 content mark. So this is to keep, you know, the weaker students. We're at a common level paper now, so I can see this happening. So let's say ich spiele Fußball, but you forget to put spiele in, so it's ich Fußball. I can see them giving 1 content mark for something like that. Or if there's 2 subjects, so ich and du. So for example, wie heißt du? Ich, du heiße Thomas. Again, I think they'll give 1 content mark. It's clear that you've understood the question, but obviously the delivery, the production, there's been a severe error there, but comprehension has been understood. Therefore, I think they will give a content mark for that. And I think that's what they're going to take over from the ordinary level letter. Now, there's always going to be a perfect tense question in there, but also there will also be a general cultural question. So if you look at the sample paper, was findest du an deutschsprachigen Ländern interessant? Very, very general, but I do think that a cultural question will always be on the paper, on each blog or email. So other examples might include Feste, Essen, Städte, Personen, but again, keeping it quite general for students to be able to make up their own, mind there. Now, expression mark, I think it will be quite similar to the higher level paper here, just that perhaps they will allow, maybe it will be a little easier to get maybe in the middle section than perhaps at higher level paper. Okay, so how does Gefällt Mir aid production? Well, in Gefällt Mir, each chapter is split into 3 Teile, and each tile begins with a sentence builder, and then exercises follow. So for example, here we have welches Fach machst du gern or nicht gern? Ich lerne gern Sprachen, weil die Fächer logisch sind, or something like that. So there's nice little sentence builders there that will aid students in their production. And as we know, producing language is definitely the hardest part. And then we have the success criteria, which is the W5, and it gets students actually into knowing the four important question words. So wann, wie, wo, warum. So here we have, so wann is kind of getting students to try and use time phrases just to make their sentences a little bit more interesting. So instead of saying ich spiele Fußball, ich spiele jeden Tag Fußball, for example. Or we have, so again, the success criteria are modified depending on the task and the level of the student. So have you included adjectives or enough detail for each point? So trying to get students to use adjectives. Then we have wo, so the word order, and if they're using wann, wie, wo, so the time, manner, place there. Then we have warum, giving reasons for your opinion. So again, this will be very important because remember that if you have 1 content mark, to get the second one, then you would need to give a reason for your opinion. So just to get them looking at that from the outset, and obviously that, it starts off very easy and progresses it gets progressively more perhaps sophisticated. Okay, so the assessment task is completely new to us. And as you know yourselves from 2020, it starts with a general MFL video stimulus that students don't need to comment on. Then they have their 3 reflection sheets from CDA2, and then they choose 2 prompts from a total of 5. So these prompts will be 2 marks each. So the answers they give will be 2 marks each. I can see this being kind of broken, those 20 marks being broken down into 4 possible points with 5 marks per point. So that's kind of how I would see this developing. So these were actually the prompts from 2020. So how creating a text about a topic that interests me helped my language learning, how my awareness of language patterns helped me as a language learner, how a specific piece of feedback was useful to me, and how my understanding of customs and behaviors helped my language learning, and a specific piece of advice I would give to other language learners. Now, it was important to me when we started writing Gefällt Mir that these type of questions were used from the beginning, because I think it's all well and good having tick the box exercises, but you know, students need to start developing their reflective language quite early. It's not a skill that you can just overnight develop. So throughout the portfolio, I have questions after any substantial text, and there are reflective questions. So one important thing I learned from doing this task, for example, or how I used my language learning to complete the oral task, or something I would change or try to improve on. And as you can see, the reflective questions are never the same. They always change, because otherwise students stop thinking. So, you know, giving them a little bit of a different question to ponder and to come up with an answer. Okay, so actually, I just wanted to have a quick look at the digital resources we have as well. So we have each chapter has a monologue with worksheets. We have a bingo game, poster matching games, PowerPoints for each chapter on grammar, class tests with listening, editable schemes, solutions, and CBA videos for all 4 oral tasks with exercises in the textbook. So actually, this is quite informative for students, you know, for CBA support. So I just wanted to have a quick, just show you quickly the bingo game, which is quite nice especially for the first years. So as you can see here, you can print cards, like you can print them like this or like this, and if you laminate them, you'll have them forever. And then, right, we go back to game here. So let's say I'm going to put in Reiten here. And then you press start. Reiten. And then the students cross out if they have Reiten. And it keeps going. Basketball. They keep going until somebody has 4 in a row.
Hockey.
And then they shout bingo. And now you can see all of these digital resources on the Folens page, and you can actually also see the full book. So the full book, ebook, and the full e-portfolio are all available on Folens on the website. So ich denke, ich wäre dann soweit, Nive. Ich gucke jetzt mal, wie ich das am besten dir wieder zurück.
Thanks, everyone. A few minutes for questions. While they're coming in, just wanted to reiterate what Maeve said there. So on Folens.ie, you can see the books, the digital resources. A sample of each resource is up there as well to take a look at. And there will also be a mailer going out to you very shortly, just explaining Gefällt Mir a little bit more as well. And it's probably worth mentioning, obviously, that you can obviously connect with your local sales rep as well, just if you have questions about the book. Maeve, just to kind of, there's a question there around CBA. You mentioned the CBA videos, and someone wants to know what CBA supports are available.
Yeah, so okay, so there's a chapter 11 in the book, which is all about oral communication. And this has that goes through the 4 oral tasks. And there are videos for each oral task. And in fact, one of them is actually on the Folens website. And in the book, then there are activities for each of those. And then in the portfolio, we have a planner and post-reflective tasks on each of them. So the interview, the role play, the conversation on stimulus, and the presentation. So yeah, and also yeah, I think that's obviously we have throughout the book, we also have oral kind of exercises in the book as well. And I suppose there is a strong emphasis also on CBA 1. It's all about CBA 1 in that oral communications chapter, because that's kind of, I suppose this book is kind of a 1.5-year book, and it's getting them ready for the CBA 1.
Okay. There's another question with regard to grammar. So one person uses Alles klar and says that they don't have enough grammar resources, and how's that done? Gefällt mir.
Okay, so yeah, it was very important to me to give the book, to have plenty of exercises in the book. Now, I don't know, I can if you look at the book, the ebook, you'll see that there are, there's plenty of exercises there. I don't know, I could show you it on the book. If you send, I'll show you maybe in the book if you can see. But anyway, there's plenty of exercises there for them to practice. So here we have. Kannst du das sehen?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
We can see that. That's perfect.
Here, upsala. Here, for example, so Meinungen äußern, this is about gern, nicht gern, so they have plenty of exercises there. Also, at the end of that chapter, at the end of each chapter, we have Wiederholungsübungen. So here, there's plenty of exercises there as well. And then there are editable class tests online, as I mentioned, and each chapter has grammar supports as well. So I think there is a lot there for grammar exercises. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, there's a question around culture. So somebody uses viel Spaß and likes the culture in that and wants to know how Gefällt Mir deals with culture.
Okay, so there's a different kind of culture things here. We have what was important to me was to have each kind of cultural topic that it has sort of activities based around it. So, for example, here we have the Deutsche Fußballtrainer. Here's Thomas Tuchel and Jürgen Klopp, for example. This is kind of a current, very current and up-to-date culture here. We have the Berlinale here. So these are, I suppose, reading comprehensions. Then we have something here on actors. So they research an actor, for example. And we also have a lot of kind of online research activities. So for example, an example perhaps would be the Schrebergarten activity here. Schrebergärten, so they go online and find out what a Schrebergarten is. So different little things like that we have. Yeah, I think, and yeah, I think that's kind of it. Again, you can check the Folens website.
There's a question that ties in with that, Maeve.
Okay. Sorry,
my connection is not great, so apologies. There's a question that ties in with that. For the cultural question at the end of the paper, if a student says something that's not factually correct, will they lose marks? Is a question that's come in here. So it's with regard to the cultural question.
It would probably depend on, like, I mean, we shouldn't see culture as stereotypical either. So it would really kind of depend like what they're saying. I mean, if they're saying that Deutschland liegt in Amerika, obviously that would be wrong. But if it was something like die Deutschen essen gern Sushi, you know, I'm sure that some of them do. I don't think we could penalize them for something that, you know, that isn't stereotypical. But if it was factually incorrect, like 6,000 Leute wohnen in der Schweiz, that would be wrong. So I think it's mainly about language as well. But if something was actually completely wrong, I can imagine perhaps they would lose the mark. But I think they're going to be quite loose with content marks. Are quite easy to get. It's really the expression marks where you'd lose marks. But you know, content marks, quite often students will get nearly maximum content marks if they're, you know. So I doubt they would. I think most things will be accepted. Yeah.
Okay, I'm conscious of time, Maeve, so I just wanted to, there's a few questions in around book 2. There's been a few questions about, first of all, will there be a book 2? Yes, we can confirm there'll be a book 2. There's questions around, is the perfect tense covered in this book, or will we have to wait for the second book?
Okay, so the perfect tense is will be covered in the next book. So yeah, and at the beginning of the next book, it'll be covered. Yeah. And I suppose book 2 will certainly, there'll be a lot more on the assessment task as well. I think that's something that you know, it is 10% of the exam, and I do think you know, I think more supports on the assessment task would be important. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. I think it might be worth mentioning as well, you know, I touched upon it, that there will be a teacher's guide, but the teacher's guide will also have little kind of, you know, useful things in it in terms of additional activities around, you know, how to use the sentence builders that are in the book, for example. So they, I think, be really useful for scaffolding, and also exercises. You call them low prep, I think, Maeve, low prep exercises.
Yeah, low prep.
Yeah, so that might be worth noting as well. There's loads of inspiration in there for kind of bringing fun into the classroom as well. When do we expect book 2? That is around this time next year. So I can answer that one, hopefully. Lovely. Right. Just to finish off, maybe Bridget, our genie behind the scenes, might just give the sharing back to me, so I can just pull up the last slide there, Bridget, if you don't mind. Thank you. Brilliant. So yes, if you want to take a look at the book, there's a flip book, as Maeve said earlier already.
Niamh, man kann dich gar nicht hören. Niamh, man kann dich schlecht hören.
Contact your local phones rep. There also will be. Oh, can you not hear me? I'm so sorry. My connection is not brilliant. Kannst du mich jetzt hören?
Jetzt besser, ja.
Yeah, I put off the camera. Okay. Yeah, can you hear me better? Okay, my apologies. So yes, as Maeve said earlier, the resources are available on Folens.ie. So the flip book is actually a really nice way of just flicking through the book and just taking a look at it, basically. And it's so engaging, you know, and you can see how the chapters are structured. If you have questions, you can just contact your local Folens rep, and there'll also be a direct mailer. I just wanted to remind everybody as well that we have recorded this session, so everybody who's attended will get a link to the recording after this this call. And if you just stay on, if you don't mind, just to answer one survey question, that would be brilliant. And at this point, I just want to thank Maeve for her time. We're delighted to have Maeve on board as one of our newest authors, and as you can hopefully agree, she's very knowledgeable when it comes to the exam, and we really hope that you like this book. And just a thanks as well to Aoife and Bridget behind the scenes, just helping with this webinar today. So, vielen Dank. schönen Abend noch. Enjoy your Pancake Tuesday and ja, alles Gute.